everybody. It's Conscious Medium Brandon Russ. Welcome to Whiskey and Bagels. And with me, as always, is
astrologer and life coach Penny Dix.
Penny.
That surprised you, didn't it?
Listen, you went full Nadia Comaneci. You trained like crazy, right?
Yeah.
You got Bella, whatever his name was.
I was at drama school. Did you know that? I went to drama school.
I know you did. It pays off. It pays off because I'm a no drama mama, so that's kind of how it rolls.
So I learned about drama.
Right, you know where it's appropriate, which
totally.
by the way, it's very rare in this industry. So listen, we're about to head into a beautiful, insane month. We're up, we're down, we're in and out. Everything gets touched in March, and we're dedicating this show to a look at the Ukraine war. I on a personal note, it launched my YouTube channel onto another plateau when I did my my entire thing. I'm going to have a reaction video. One of the things I'm working on is a reaction video to release on that day to say what I got right, what I didn't get right, what were some of the things that were
nice.
Astrologically it's happened, but whether or not it's going to be sustainable or not is another thing. But that's kind of how you and I formed in a lot of ways, because
we met soon. Yeah, we met soon after, because I saw your Zelensky video and I thought, he's hot. And then I listened to the video.
You guys, and you know what the funny thing is? I'm the one that gets the misogynistic comments.
I know.
Isn't it just, it's such a double standard.
I had to throw that in.
I know. Well, thank you. I appreciate any compliments you send my way. I really do appreciate that.
But at the time, Andrea had said to me, can you find somebody on YouTube and see if they'd be willing to collaborate with you and do a video? And so, well, he's nice and he's got lots of subscribers. So, and also I thought your astrology was pretty damn good. And I thought that video was bloody damn good.
Well, thank you for respecting me.
In the first 2 minutes.
Thank you for respecting me. Respecting me in the morning. But it's interesting though. And I mean, even kind of this wild ride that I've had with YouTube, I want to be able to kind of talk about it and, why it hasn't necessarily escalated. Like, it's been on my own. Believe it or not, you're much more in control of how YouTube gets promoted and projected. And you and I had that conversation. I mean, your channel took off because you did the 3 things you have to do to grow a YouTube channel. You're consistent, you're to the point, and they're solid quality, right? So enough of the YouTube stuff, but the Ukraine stuff.
But also I just add to with this YouTube thing, because YouTube is a full-time job. You either do it, you either commit to it or you don't. So anyone out there who's thinking of starting a channel, you just have to be very consistent and work hard. Yeah. And I think the problem for you, Brandon, is not that you don't produce great videos along the way. It's because of all the other distractions you've got.
Are they really distractions?
Of where you are in your life. Well, they're not, are they? They're what these? Oh, but sorry. All
right. Hold on a second. At the same time that your person Andrea was saying, go ahead and meet up with some hot American, so then your channel will grow. Here was mine. Find someone that consumes alcohol on a regular basis with assets. Like, that's what. So check. Like, we're there. Okay. Your words.
Was this like one of those dating apps? Oh, she's cool. Swipe left, swipe right.
I genuinely, I mean this wholeheartedly. I make jokes about that all the time, but I'm making jokes about it because I don't I'm 100% vicarious through that. But what drew me to you was the idea that you could give the international or the European perspective. Like, that's why I thought it would really work. And I remember, those of you that don't know, I'm in upstate New York, and there's a town nearby here that's called Malta. that's Malta, New York. So when I saw you were from Malta, and I'm like, I kind of know everybody in the area. How do I not know you? That's how we ended up speaking, because you reached out. And I'm like, how do I not know you? Like, what the frig? Like, I'm a stop on the tour usually. And when we talked, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're in the middle of the Mediterranean. And I'm like, and I'm going through all of this, and I go, oh, you're a mixture of Greek and Italian culture, along with, the Meso-African, subcontinent, and blah, blah, blah. And you were just like, yeah, I'm in Gozo. Like, here I am, like, throwing out all sorts of kind of like fun facts. And meanwhile, you're just sitting there going, yes, we'll do this. Yes, we'll do it. What should we call it? As you're sipping your drink and I'm eating a bagel. True
Whiskey
story.
And Bagels.
Whiskey and Bagels. Okay, we'll start there. Like, and honestly, that I have never thought less of a title of a channel or of a show or anything, of a presentation. Usually I mull it over for 3 to 6 weeks. I've got to be Piscean about it. But anyway, speaking of Pisces, speaking of, this sort of thing, we are we're in Pisces season. And the idea of kind of like what we're up against and how things are flowing and what's up here, like, we're really going into it. Like, we had a pretty mild, like, 4 to 6 weeks here, and mild meaning, we had some cool transits, we had some cool whatever, but March is going to explode. And I'm saying this to everybody, make sure you explore all of our videos this month. Like, usually we say, hey, click like and subscribe and all that other stuff. And Penny and I are going to be doing some things a little bit differently here moving forward. But it's so that we can grow the channel, so that we can grow ourselves individually, so we can grow this show in particular, because we think this show can get to a higher platform. In the meantime, we're going to keep in the steady Eddie lane and, put out one a week and that sort of thing. And we're on episode 42. So 42.
Wow.
I mean, how many weeks are there in a year? 56, 52, sorry, 52 weeks a year. So it took us 10 weeks to get connected and put out a video between the Ukraine starting and there.
Yes, but I don't think we actually communicated till after that. So I think it was March. In fact, I did make a note of it because I thought astrologically it'd be very interesting.
Right.
But at the time, I noted down when I messaged you.
So yeah, so as much as I will say, damn the damn the war, I'm grateful that and I was suggested by somebody. They were like, I'm like, wow, I'm looking at the astrology of this, and she's like, why aren't you doing a YouTube video? I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to do that. I haven't done a YouTube video in forever. And I had this plan of classes and all this other stuff, which is now taking hold, in the back end of this. But it's allowed for my vision to really kind of come together. But, in the last, those of you that have been following this, and those of you that are on my, that are members on my side of it, I really gave you guys a heads up. I'm working with my 2 elderly parents. They're both in a spot. So it's, they can't take care of each other anymore. So it's kind of like, that's a full-time job, as much as YouTube is a full-time job, that's a full-time job. And it's,
and that's really what I was saying. I'm in the position at the moment where I don't have those responsibilities. I've had them in my life, but I've got to the other side of it.
Feed the cats, get to the package store, have a nice dinner, whiskey and bagels. Like, those are your priorities. I get it.
That's it.
But I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be in this spot. I wish it was for different reasons, but this war, and as things kind of unfold into this, anytime I talk about Ukraine, anytime I talk about, Russia into all of this, like, there is reasonable evidence that there is something that Russia is provoked to a certain degree, if you want to be a crybaby about it. Like, there are tit for tat things, right? There's also the US doing downright dirty shit again, because it's what we do. And we have to learn as a country not to do that stuff. And this might have been the final straw. When you blow up somebody's pipeline, in it's dirty pool. It's also, you also recognize where, we're paying, $3.60 a gallon right now, $3.80 a gallon for gas, petrol, as you call it. And, the economic conditions are actually sitting in the chart. The economic conditions are there, the political conditions, and we're coming off of, Biden going to visit Zelensky. And, which was, I mean, how was it covered in Europe? Like, how did Europe look at it?
Oh, it was big. I mean, it was, headline news basically. And I think the fact that he had managed it in such a kind of, so privately, none of us knew about it. And I know I did a heads up, and of course I can't remember what the planetary thing was that day, but it was, if I find my, it was, no, can't find it. Content, bear with me. It was, oh, this is really good, isn't it? Oh, shorts, here we go.
Well,
okay, Pisces new moon. Of course it was.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was a new moon.
Biden to Ukraine, literally on the same day.
Right. And the timing of it.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
Well, and of course, what did we talk about with this new moon? Stylistic communications, being able to be like, hey, emotionally, this is where we're at with you. Not letting, putting your foot down on certain things, but allowing other things to come in. Here in the US, we have this anomaly, and I'm going to begin to call it the chaos factor, because it started with the Trump administration. You also have things of resonance from previous administrations, and I'm talking about Obama, I'm talking about Bush, I'm talking about Clinton even, that there were things that were done, and it's that dirty pool, underhanded, if you don't know it, just be grateful that you woke up in a free country bullshit that we tell ourselves. And we have every reason to call out the dirty pool stuff. This war was escalated when our former president, who by the way, who was about to get indicted, he's about to get indicted for basically trying to overthrow an election. Like, we've never had this in the history of the United States. And the Pluto return here is showing that it's a revelation of the dominoes that are about to fall. And as you go further into, say, this Ukraine war, you learn of the skullduggery that kind of has gone on. As much as Ukraine has not been part of NATO, NATO has been training Ukrainian soldiers for 2 decades. Like, that's kind of overreaching in my book. That's, as much as we're like, oh, we're just helping out a friend. We're helping out a friend because we have vested interest to let Russia know that that's never going to happen. We don't want you to invade you.
Are you suggesting that Russia has a point in what it says?
100%, but the point could have been managed at a table, and that's Vladimir Putin's insanity. I'm still calling Putin insane. It's, and Zelensky is tied to some shit that's not good. He's tied to some stuff that it's like, I mean, just like Trump, reality stars aren't politicians. They're chosen for a reason. And as brave as he is, and I'm not taking any of this away from him, I think he's one of those people that has, I think what we're really seeing out of Zelensky is his clean conscience to be like, you know what, I got us into this, I'm going to get us out of it.
Okay.
And listen, I have no sympathy for Putin in this. I have no sympathy even for Russia for this. As much as I see their point, our actions of escalating different parts of this war hurt everybody. Blowing up a pipeline affects your dollars. We've already got a very
Who are you suggesting blew up the pipeline then?
The US blew up the Nord.
You do think the US did it?
It's the only logical. They're trying to blame Macedonia. They're trying to blame, who else? It makes no sense. The only people that would truly actually benefit from it is a weakened Russia, is the US. Not even the Ukraine. Not even Ukraine would benefit from that, because there's a series of things, because what they would actually do better with, Ukraine has actually been stealing fuel from Russia for decades, because they don't have the entire pipeline, covered. But so have other countries, and I'm not going to accuse them. I'm not going to say their names, but other Eastern Bloc countries have benefited from it. And so when the U.S. did that, the U.S. put a pressure onto a lot of different things. And I know this is an astrology show, but the reason why I'm spending the time with this is, astrologically, we really have to take a look at both sides of the aisle on this. And listen, Russia, quit bombing kids, quit blowing up schools, stop it. There's other ways to talk about this. And if you're Russian by descent or by nationality, call the Kremlin and say, this isn't okay worldwide. And I know it's a dictatorship, and I know that just draws ire. I know all of those things, but something is falling apart there.
In Russia.
Yeah. I mean, generationally, Russia has done a very poor job of replacing its own population, and now it's being killed off. So you're on the other side of whatever the outcome is of this. Russia will be very, very weakened. You're also seeing China doing a lot of posturing right now for the same reason. Do you remember about 20 years ago, there was only one child per household? And if it was a girl, they were sent out to be adopted. I mean, I had a front row seat for that. I looked into it, many years ago, and they did it for political and cost benefit expediency, because the men were valuable and the men could be soldiers. Well, what they did vicariously in that moment, they had the economic pressures that they couldn't provide enough, and they would have needed more beneficial relationships, like with Japan. Or, I mean, Japan is absolutely isolated China in so many different ways. As much as China thinks that they're in charge, Japan kind of holds the South Pacific, at bay. And they needed Russia, they needed the US. And truthfully be told, the three countries really that are in the best position to move into a global position now are Brazil, because of its population, India because of its population, and also hang on to that for a second, Japan, because they have economically been, the fiduciaries of things. So we're seeing this global thing. And I know some of you have nodded off and come back, and they're like, all right, okay, when do we get into the astrology? Here it comes. I'm setting the groundwork, because in this return, in this solar return for Ukraine, you've got to take all of those things into consideration. This is, as much as we're talking about Ukraine and Russia, we are talking about the US. We are talking about, the Eastern Bloc states. We're also talking, Norway is the other one. Norway is actually positioned to outgrow every other European country by a mile, because what they did is they figured out where your relationships, before they severed ties with relationships, they make sure they had multiple options for everything. And the big push now is going to be in minerals. Forget about natural resources. We can find natural resources. It's stuff like cobalt. It's stuff like iridium. It's things like, it is the stuff that fell down from the sky into our planet, that came from outside of the planet, that will be a thing. And you know what cobalt's good for?
Phones. It's like, isn't it? Lithium is another
one. Yeah, these metals that make our world go is really the last, kind of vestige. Well, everything that's old is new again, right? So when you study world cultures and world history, you begin to understand that the worship of gold has been, kind of since the beginning of time, right? That is why when you meditate, you say Om. What it's doing is, what they were doing, you're thinking that it's like a centering thing, but they were saying Om, and that is the ancient word for gold. That is why in the periodic table, it is AU. So it was the worship of gold. That is what we revered more than anything as a culture and a society. Why we did it? Well, I think it's the connection of the technologies. And by the way, it is 100%, keep in mind things like the earthquake in Turkey. Keep in mind the other, there was another civilization discovered in the Southeast Asian peninsula, I think it was in Laos, where there were a couple of miners trying to find new mines, and they walked right into this ancient city. And then when they were like, they came back and they're like, what was the name of that ancient city? They were just kind of like, hey, we don't, that's not why we're here, but whatever. And they're like, there's nothing on the map. They went back to it and they're like, this is an entirely new civilization sitting in the jungle, sitting in plain sight. Nothing was guarding it. There were no, it wasn't like you had to cascade down a mountain range in order to find it. Like, it wasn't hidden. It wasn't,
Yeah.
It could have just been walked upon just like this. And it was probably walked upon 100 times. It's just nobody questioned it until now. That is the realization and part of this reveal that's going on right now. And as Pluto goes into Aquarius, as Saturn goes into Pisces, like, we are just, wow. So that's like perspective talk. I'm sorry I'm dominating it, but
no, it's okay. It's
yeah,
okay.
I mean, I just look at this chart with that setting in it, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, what's your, I mean, what do you feel from like a world history standpoint from where you sit? What do you think?
A world history standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're moving into I think we've probably been here before, but I don't think in any of our kind of recorded history, experiences, are we prepared for what we're going into? Because I think this Pluto in Aquarius, what we have to look at is what happened last time Pluto was in Aquarius, and which I have got written down somewhere, but I'm saving that for the Pluto in Aquarius when we do that.
That's fair.
But I just want to say something a little bit about how I'm feeling, because the feedback I'm getting from some clients and some of my subscribers is that they're really feeling this energy of everything. It's like we're coming up to the crest of a kind of tsunami wave, and there's nothing we can do about it. We've just got to go with this. It's like we're moving into and I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted all the time at the moment. I'm just finding the energy is really tiring me out. And I believe we've had quite a few solar flares, and I know that can affect us. And, I felt quite, what's the word? Full of the sort of the anxiety. And it's eased off since the new moon. The new moon in Pisces kind of seemed to ease something, break something. But in general, it feels as if it's building up again. Well, of course, we've got a full moon in Virgo. That's what we're going to get next, which is on the same day as Saturn goes into Pisces, the 7th of March.
Boom, boom, boom.
It's it just keeps on giving. And, what's happening in the world, I just think it's interesting. You have this kind of tit for tat world leaders giving talks. You have Biden in Ukraine turning up unexpectedly and giving a kind of, State of the Union kind of talk. And then you've got Putin in Russia giving one of his and kind of, railing on about how wonderful his soldiers are and how wonderful Russia is. And then Biden does it yet again in Poland a little bit later, and has this big kind of, sort of rallying the troops, I guess. So then, I mean, I think it was a great move of Biden's to make this trip to Ukraine. I think that was
well, he was crucified back home.
Was he? Why?
Oh God, because we have this immature, Congress who have no appreciation for, the history of the United States or whatever. Their only goal is to beat the other guy, no matter how it happens. And these are the same people that were booing him during his speech. I mean, it's just a level of disrespect that, like, whatever, they're just trash. And listen, I'm not even going to talk about their politics because I can't get to it, because they're booing somebody that's in a position of respect. You know, I mean, that's the one thing about Trump. Like, they still respect. They disagreed with him. They were like, this is buffoonery, but they didn't like talk through him, type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, he was criticized for, you know, he couldn't even be in the United States on President's Day. No, he actually acted like a leader, and in this case, a world leader, and went and shook hands with Zelensky behind enemy lines, by the way. Like, let's not forget that. And
security.
yeah, I mean, and then he took a fucking train. Are you kidding me? He took, I mean, that's a juke. Like, in like,
that's like a missile can come down and just go boom.
They got any word of that, you can telegraph that in 2.2. If you're in an airplane, you can maneuver that. You're in a helicopter, you can fly low. Like, there's a lot. I'm sure that they looked at a lot of different things, but for him to go on a fireside chat tour through Europe, by the way, those of you that understand US history got that. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the first Roosevelt, went across country to campaign, and his train would stop. He'd walk out the back. He'd have hundreds of thousands of people. He would talk and, you know, everything else, and then he'd move on to the next city. It was technology at its finest at the time, and he would bullhorn it. And it was, I mean, that's how he won that election. He literally went from place to place, and that's kind of what Biden did. Yeah, I think we should take a look at the chart.
I was going to say we should take a look at the astrology.
Let's take a look at the
anyone still watching.
They're watching. I think they find it interesting, to be honest with you. I mean, this is the Ukraine. I mean, and the reason why I think it's interesting is because, you know, we're really applying it. And one of the best compliments that you and I get all the time is how much people learn from what we talk about. And that's, I put that ahead of the shock value of a popularity. But, you know, you take a look at a couple of the indicators. This is when the war broke out. This is February 24th, 2022.
2022. Yeah.
By the way, this is also almost 2 years to the date to when the pandemic broke out.
Yes, almost.
Like when the US started closing things down.
Yeah. Well, Europe, we started shutting down just in the beginning of March, about the second week of March. We started closing.
This is kind of the 2-year anniversary of when, you know, the US said we're gonna put things on hold. We need to flatten the curve. This is when we started to realize it was an issue. So there's that kind of solar return here for that as well. But the things that jump out at me is that first house. First and foremost, it's the first house,
the Capricorn.
Where you have Venus and Mars in conjunct, the wider conjunct to Venus and Pluto, but you've got all of that energy in the first house, where that rebellion, you know, Pluto and Mars get together, you can all but guarantee that there's going to be something going on.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, the fact that it's Capricorn, and which is cardinal, so you've got this kind of very direct, assertive energy that was coming out at that time. You know, it wasn't a fixed chart, it was a cardinal chart with cardinal points on the 4 quarters. You've got Chiron in the 4th at home. So this is like on home turf. There are wounds, and these, of course, and we know that these wounds are ancestral. The wounds that Ukraine has, and the wounds that Russia has, because all the boundaries have changed. And of course, Capricorn is the sign of boundaries. And isn't war of this description always about the boundaries and the fact that they don't like that the boundaries changed? But, you know, Putin's idea to come back and make Russia great again, kind of thing, and sort of
trademark. I mean, Trump probably has that patent somewhere, just to let you know. You know,
I know the brand.
Hey, Vlad, you know, it's your old friend Donnie. Listen, I can make Russia great again. Anyways, can I use your programmers?
You know, the energy of this was it was that, I'm just trying to think what we were looking at last time, because, well, yes, the Mars and Venus in Capricorn and Pluto have to be the kind of agents of how this unfolded. Sun conjunct Jupiter. So we're looking at everything being blown up, literally expanded. Uranus in Taurus is explosive, and it's earth-shattering. So, and a lot of I think what's interesting is the energy is in the lower half of the chart, which can indicate that this is about a country's psyche. This is about the country actually needing to heal these wounds from within and not act it out on a platform.
Well, hold on a second. Look at the Lilith placement in opposition to the Mars-Venus conjunct. This means they needed, the Russia kind of needed somebody to work out their healing, work out their underbelly, right? The significant things that are above the line, which is the public, of course, you've got the MC there, but you've also got the moon, which is emotional. I mean, it's personal emotion. It's erratic emotion.
But it's in the 12th house.
Well, so you've got Sagittarius plus the 12th house. That's an emotional, that's just an emotional overload. But that Lilith in Cancer is working it out with the family. And how many times have people said Russia and Ukraine really should be brothers?
Because they are all the same. I mean, whether they, like that or not, it was all part of Russia. And I know that doesn't mean that it has to be again. And I think that this is where it's so difficult. It's like, well, in America, in North America, you could say that the North American Indians can say, look, get out, because this is our territory.
And the bigger part to this, is don't you realize that the way that Russia is acting is to say, we need you to make us whole, right? It's an identity crisis. That first house is also an identity crisis. They feel not empowered, or they feel boldened. It's kind of like, I'm going to take my power back. That's what that position is. And I don't care how I do it. I don't care if I ruin my morals, even. I'm going to go do that. And listen, do you think we should move forward here and talk about?
Well, let's look at the solar return chart, but without anything else in it. Just look at the ascendant changes. So look, the ascendant changes to Taurus. So you've got that Uranus in the 12th house.
Yeah. Oh my, what a year looks.
Sorry?
I said, why my what a year looks like, because everything's externalized, right? It's above the IC, right? And you've got that all of this business here in the 11th house, which is the in-house. It's also in that extended thing. So now the world's involved. Where once, in comparison, that lower part and that stuff in the first house and that externalization to the 7th house with Lilith was saying, hey, we're going to pull Ukraine into this so we find our identity. Now it's sitting there. I mean, this is a very public, this is World War stuff, guys. This is World War stuff.
And I mean, look at Pluto in Capricorn at the 29th degree in the 8th house. So, this is death. This is endings, huge, powerful endings. And yes, it is World War stuff. I agree.
And it's conjunct with the MC. So this is a very public thing. Very public.
Yeah, because exactly. And you've got Saturn on the midheaven at 28 degrees, about to go into Pisces. So you've got this, it's been overseas, the involvement, you could say, with Mercury in that 9th house, and Saturn is about the involvement that has come from, the big bosses like NATO and everything with Saturn there. And it now goes to the world, doesn't it? Because it's going into, well, of course it is in it to the world because it is Aquarius, but it's going into Pisces.
Yeah.
Saturn is going into Pisces, into the 10th house. So this is trying to make some sense out of the kind of the boundarylessness, if that's a word, of Pisces.
I'll allow it.
Because Pisces has no boundaries.
Yeah.
And it is this depth of emotion and wealth of rich kind of sort of algae in the sea. There is so much. It's almost like Pisces is the primordial soup. And Saturn is moving.
Yeah, we kind of are. We kind of are.
Yeah. And, we could say that Saturn is actually conjunct the sun.
It really is. It is.
It's an outer sign conjunction, but they're conjunct.
And so, as Saturn moves into Pisces,
this is the world getting involved.
Yeah, this is an escalation, guys.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to be, scary. We're already involved. The world's already involved. Let's just accept that already.
And there's going to be more going on at sea because of Neptune there in Pisces in the 10th. Lots going on at sea. It's like opening up another front. It's going to come from the Black Sea.
And listen, look for blockades. This is I'm going to share this. So on top of doing all of this other stuff, I still have to move my career forward. And I have been offered to do some, travel work and that sort of thing. And one of them actually involved a cruise ship. And I took a look at the chart for me to be on a cruise ship, and I politely said no.
Oh.
I was given a very solid offer to give it a try, and I politely said no, because the timing in which they wanted me to go was not good for me.
Right.
I said yes, but not that one.
No, good for you.
They were a little bit like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. And I said, not according to my chart. It's actually not a good day. It's not a good week. And then it made the woman go, well, now we want you even more, because she's like, what do you see? Is this a day we should not do this? I mean, these are big multi-million-dollar companies going, asking me now, like, what else do you see in the chart? Why shouldn't you do this? Yeah. And I go, it's all about Neptune for you. And what's interesting is that we still have, and we're going to have a very interesting month with March, where it's going to be an ebb and a flow. And don't forget the two aspects of astrology. And Penny, I think you and I opened up very well with this, where I talked a lot about the world, and then you talked about the personal. Don't forget that there's always two parts to every astrological connection. There is the world at large, and then there's the personal, right? Yeah. The things that we're going into, the reason why we focus so much, here's the combination. When we talk about the actions of a country, we're talking about Saturn, we're talking about Pluto, we're talking about, Jupiter. When we're talking about personal interactions, we focus more into Venus and then, Mars and Mercury. When we have things like conjunctions or squares, such as say the moon and Pluto here, what we're talking about is that this is when we're able to say the world leaders like Zelensky or Putin or Biden are going to make decisions based on this, or they're going to take a look at things. That's our combination code. So when it comes to things like world leaders, they're shaping their countries, they're shaping our history. So what are they personally going to be affected by on the decisions for the course of a country, let's say, or the course of a war? We're sharing this with you so you begin to understand astrology on a different level, because that's the stuff we have to do. Yeah, Patty.
Listen, I'm just looking at that Uranus in the 12th.
Yeah.
Uranus is at 15 degrees, which means it's basically at the midpoint of the sign of Taurus, which emphasizes its energy. It's the 12th house, which is about feeling trapped, imprisonment in that sense. Uranus, of course, is about freedom, wanting to break out. This really is that you can see how this year, this is going to reach a kind of like a clashing point. If the world is going to step in and help because of all that energy in Aries. Aries is the sign of war. Aries is the sign that represents war because of its ruler Mars that is in the first house of identity. So it's like the talk is done. Now it's time for action. And which side that comes from. But as this is the chart of the aggressor moving into Ukraine, then I would say that it is Russia that are the still going to remain a really quite prominent aggressor in this situation, and that the rest of the world will be desperately trying to kind of repair and heal the energies that are coming at them, because look at that Jupiter coming up to Chiron. They're basically conjunct, and you know they're conjunct in the beginning of March, or first or second week of March. And you know, this exaggerates that energy. On one level, of course, it can be healing, but it can also exaggerate the negative. So there is this that 11th house and that 12th house, I think, are key to everything.
I'm going to vanish on my Chiron return. Just to
I think you better. And I think that the potential for we've got to think about Pluto at the 29th degree of Capricorn. This is its final kind of fanfare, even though it will dip back into Capricorn several times over the next 2 years before it finally moves into Aquarius at the end of 2024. The fact that Capricorn is in the 8th house of this at the 29th degree, on that cusp, this is like something happens that is so awful that as Pluto moves into the 9th house of this chart, it says, now we all have to be part of this, and we all have to, you know, we've all got to join together to collectively find a way through this. Does that sort of make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to be the medium for 30 seconds. I think Russia moves into another country.
Maybe that's what they've got up their sleeve for the anniversary.
I think I would not be surprised if this is going to be a call sign to move into Poland.
I was going to say Poland, yeah.
You know, I mean, listen, that Biden didn't go there by accident. You know, and maybe it is some of the smaller countries. Maybe it's their way of kind of saying, you know what, maybe we should occupy Estonia and Latvia. I mean, that's what Putin wanted to begin with. Putin's just like, why did we ever give this stuff up? Like, are you kidding me? You know, I'm also going to bring in this Mars in Gemini as well. This Mars in Gemini, remember, if you go back and you watch a lot of our videos, any astrologer, when they talk about Mars in Gemini, this is one of the squirreliest placements for any planet in Gemini. It is just unpredictable upon unpredictions.
Yeah.
And so expect the unexpected. That is Mars in Gemini. And do not accept things at face value because there's somebody kind of working against it or working underneath it. And you know, you've got this energy connected now to, and if I'm reading this correctly, I think this is a sextile to Mercury to Mars.
No, you've got hang on, Mars is trining Mercury.
Thank you. That is a trine.
Yeah, it's a trine. Mars is trining.
Okay, so that trine energy is basically going to be, I mean, here's the good news. It's something like Putin walking into the capital of Estonia and putting the flag up and saying, you know, welcome back to the USSR, bitches. That's what he's doing. He's not necessarily going to do it with bombs. So that's some good news because of that kind of communication angle. However, it's going to be one of those things where it's like there's a little paranoia in all of this. I'm going to tell you, you know, this is where I pick up that paranoia. When you have Mercury in the 9th house, people tend to tell the truth without knowing they're telling the truth.
Yeah, including us.
Look it up. It's funny. It's called Funny You Should Say That. It's a great book.
I don't know. I'm still waiting for it.
Well, I actually am going to the post office after this show because I'm just going to send it to you as the book. I'm going to pay the
No Twinkies.
Well, no, I mean, it means something to me. Like, this is the stuff of the frustration that I think we've had astrologically. I've sent you 2 packages. One of them got returned to me, and then the other one is in the nethers, and somebody even told me, they're like, if there's food stuff that, it's not like the US. The Pony Express is like, we're going to get it there. They're eating my fucking Twinkies right now. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
By the way, that was.
They're coming into Malta, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. And then when it's like, what do you mean you didn't get my,
Twinkie.
my Twinkies? I'll have to give you my Twinkie later.
No, I mustn't say
it's low hanging fruit. Boo, everybody, boo. All right, well, let's take a look at the actual, the year return.
Yeah. So we've got the solar return on the inside and the actual invasion on the outside. So obviously we've got this is the moon in Sag of the Ukraine invasion is in the 7th house of relationships, but also this can be open enemies, can't it? Is it open enemies or hidden enemies? I'm always getting muddled up.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, it's kind of more of a 6th house thing, but it's more of like a, but don't forget though, the inner wheel is the current condition, right? Yes. So the current condition, when you look at the old condition, which is the outside, we're looking about how, so what we're presenting here, everybody, is that when the Ukraine war started, it had purpose. Now we're bringing that purpose forward to show how that is portrayed within this. Because now, and part of the reason why we're saying that this is a amped up thing is that, I mean, to me, this is, I can summarize what I see in 2.2 seconds. When I look at the sun, when it started, it was a conjunct to Jupiter.
Right. Yeah.
Now it is conjunct with Saturn. Right. So you have this dynamic of, we're trying to expand. Now you've got contraction. So does the war, if I can make an argument, that there might be a contraction of said war, because we do say this isn't going to work, but we're going to start to form the USSR again. And negotiation wise, we can't trust you guys. And Ukraine, you can either choose to be part of this or not. They're going to say you really should. But we're going to surround you, Crimea notwithstanding, we're going to surround you. So you literally you're going to be the outcast of the family. The good news again is, here's also your Mercury return. You've got a near Mercury return here. You're going to get it a little bit later on, or it just happened really. You've got this conversation happening. Those are positive traits.
Yeah, and I think that it's also interesting that you've got the nodal axis on the descendant. So you've got of the invasion. So there's something karmic about what is being played out here, because of course the nodes have moved into the 6th and the 12th house respectively, by degree. So the destiny is, we want to capture you. We want to imprison you. That ain't great.
It's funny how all of this in this war, we're still talking a north and south node in the 12 to the 6.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really substantial onto this, right?
Yeah.
You also, it's funny, whenever you look at any cataclysmic things, not necessarily earthbound stuff, but anything that might have shaped things, you look at the 100-Year War and you take a look at the astrology to it. Well, it's how the nodes worked. You look at World War II, it's how the nodes worked. It was how the positioning of things were. A lot of people question whether or not, something like Hitler, committed suicide with Eva Braun, or he moved to Argentina, right?
Yes.
I look at that chart on that day, and I'm here to tell you he took off. I'm also here to tell you, and I stand behind all of this, when Donald Trump gets indicted, when that comes down later this week, early next week, he is going to be a flight risk. He is not someone that's going to stand up for anything that he has, because he doesn't have the ability. You would need to hunt him down like a dog to have him hold trial. He's never going to go. He's just not. Right? In this chart, I'm here to tell you that this is more about posturing and people not wanting things, but stupid shit happens when pride's in the way, right? I made a post on my Facebook, and thank you guys for following me on that as well, where I have the lion next to the child, and the lion could instinctually have a great lunch and just eat that kid. But that lion knows the difference between discernment and when it's a teacher, and when it's supposed to be brave, and when it defends, and when it's on the prowl. We have to grow up in a hurry based on that philosophy, and this is a thing. Also posted,
and I tell you what, someone makes money out of all of this. Look at that Venus in Capricorn in the 8th house. Someone makes money.
Sure as shit. This is a money grab, everybody. Look at that action. Now Mars and Venus are in conjunct, right? Or it's positioned into that. The whole thing was based in money. It was based on money, everybody. We should be questioning the money.
Because look at what's not going on in our communications sector. We've got Lilith in Leo in the solar return chart. So that's kind of like, I wouldn't trust what anyone says about anything, actually, because it's all for show.
It's bullshit.
Actually, that's interesting. It's all for show. Leo is showmanship. So who is actually, who are these leaders actually, who is the audience for what is being acted out?
Ukraine is not innocent.
No, that's yes.
But I will defend them to not be bombed. There's a difference between, I mean, it's kind of like when somebody does something wrong, and by the way, we're in this cancel culture and all this other stuff. It is so toxic on a personal level when somebody cancels somebody. It's fucking bullshit. And I'm sorry I'm swearing so harshly. It's bullshit, because if you really cared about the person, you wouldn't cancel them. If you're canceling them, what you're doing is you're projecting. There's something in me that I don't like in you, and I can use you as an example to say, I'm going to cut that out. You haven't dealt with it, you're unhealthy, and you're just toxic. The people that do the canceling are the toxic people. That's the irony in this. When I see charts like this, I'm like, they're utilizing and manipulating the languages that they're using, so they look like they're not okay. They look like they're not whatever, right? Here's the challenge with it, and I think you bring it up beautifully. Where's the healing? Where's the healing in this? It started out with Lilith. Lilith is now in this, 3rd house, right?
And the invasion chart, it's in the 2nd house.
Right. So this moves into a
money.
Well, we need you, right? The only thing that's going to bring about peace is the return of the understanding of the, mutually assured destruction isn't going to work, because that's what Ukraine and Russia are doing to each other right now. Russia, I'm going to say this, Russia as a country doesn't exist anymore, because on the other side of this, they have suffered such casualties, both economically, as well as population. Ukraine has suffered the same, right? But Zelensky looks like the cowboy, looks like the brave soul, and he is. And Putin looks like the dictator. But there are people that think Putin is the champion here. Putin is standing up for things. Because when you point out things like, okay, well, the United States hasn't necessarily, gotten into this, but there's US troops on the Polish borders right now. right? And it is because of the reason why Gorbachev said okay to Glasnost was the agreement of, and James Baker, who was the Secretary of State at the time for Reagan, basically said, we will not go into any Russian territory, not 1 inch. That included NATO, that included whatever. Putin thinks that we have acted in violation of that by training your troops, right? So this is an old wound. That's why Chiron's so important here. It's an old freaking wound.
We're reaping what we sow.
Correct.
Because if you look at that South Node in Scorpio in the solar return chart of the invasion, in the 6th house, it's conjunct the MC of the actual invasion. So we are reaping what was already sown.
And go on. And let's flip the script here to the U.S. to the U.S. Pluto returns. We don't respect our elders in this country. We just don't. We don't remember. We don't look at James Baker and go, he made a good deal. No, we villainized him. Why would you do that with Russia? Well, at the time, we ended proliferation of nuclear arms during that time. We stopped making them. Now we make them again because of this ignorance. By the way, that's why India said, we're going to have a stockpile. That's why Norway said, we're going to control the economy. You know, that's why Brazil said, Mardi Gras, anyone? Right? So you have all of these dynamics kind of coming forward where personal, vindictions come in. The United States' lesson in all of this is, once again, we made an agreement and we thumbed our nose at it. That is our culpability as a country. Ukraine is suffering because of it.
Where do you see the West in general? Where do you see Europe fitting into that? Because is this just between the US and Russia? What about Europe, like the UK, France, Germany, etc.?
I think it goes back to the sun stuff we talked about. We're in this 10th house. You've got the sun, and then you've also got Neptune in there, right? Yeah. Where it's sitting conjunct to Venus, right? And don't forget that dreamy kind of placement. Like it's kind of like horseshit. It's like you got to deal with it in reality. Yeah, it's kind of like the girlfriend in Canada, that every kid had. There was a joke in a John Hughes movie where I got a girlfriend, but she lives in Canada, where it's like you can imagine it, but is it real?
Yeah.
So I think Europe is also kind of getting privy to the illusion of what the freak are we looking at here, right? It's the illusion of, the US really doesn't have their act together. They elected an asshat. 3 of the last 4 presidents have just kind of been seedy about something. Yeah. And even the other ones just suspect for their own motivation. And now you have Saturn moving into the very squirrely, if I had to rank them, after Mars in Gemini, I would put Saturn in Pisces as one of the greatest catalysts for social change in the history of the world. Because you go back to the last time Saturn, and this is going to be in my video, you can certainly use it though.
Yeah.
Saturn in Pisces is when, the whole 70s, the 60s, sexual revolution happened. This is
but it was also in Pisces in the 90s, in the mid 90s.
When actually, things like the loan scandals were coming in,
and Hong Kong got its independence, things like that.
A lot of things.
Not its independence; it got taken back by China. Sorry.
Yeah, they're not independent, but no. You have these moments of like social change. And by the way, it also, for Saturn in Pisces in the 90s, it is also when technology took off. So you have to recognize that technology is going to come into this. And this war has been fought in the internet as much as it's been on the ground, as much as it's been in Kiev. This is an internet. I mean, we see, I remember when the, when the Gulf War started, I was 18 years old. I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very real, and this is something that I want to bring up too. It was a very real war to me because I'll never forget this. The first thing I did was I looked up draft eligibility, and I had just registered to vote. It was right before my birthday, and
Wow.
I'm like, I just registered for the draft.
Yeah.
Right. In the United States, that's what voter registration really is. It's a
Right.
census component. It's not about your rights to vote, just to let you know. You don't need to do that to do that. And it was kind of like, oh, it's just an efficiency thing. But I remember there was a kid who, he was a trench coat kid. And by the way, in the 90s, what a trench coat kid was kind of like what we would call an emo today. Wore a long trench coat, you know, had the shaved head on one side, and you know, whatever.
Oh, okay.
He might have had a ring piercing.
These are not familiar sort of images for me.
If you ever watch The Breakfast Club, the movie, it was John Bender. It was the kid who was like rebelling against everything.
Okay.
And I will never forget this moment because it was defining for me. And I didn't care for this kid. I didn't resonate with him. I didn't dislike him. Whatever. And this kid, from a brave standpoint, walked up and down the halls with a little drum, and he sang "Give Peace a Chance" over and over and over again. And
when will these money oriented leaders finally do that? The thing is, you know, I was thinking when I was listening to the news the other day and the statistics about how Ukraine needs so much more ammunition, I thought, and who makes the ammunition and how much do they make out of this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just is, this is a money machine. This is a money war.
And where is our anti-war movement now?
I don't know.
That's my question. My question isn't, is the machine so big that we can't protest it? Listen, I've been consistent from day one. I've said the war is not good. And again, I'm not saying that Ukraine is innocent. I've never said Ukraine's innocent.
But war is never the way to sort these things out. But of course, that's the only way we've ever sorted these things out.
Well,
and, you know,
well, don't we also realize that it has been, don't you think that the people in power also recognize that this is not a good solution, except if we're making money after it?
Yes.
I mean, listen, the US, and again, I know allegedly they bombed the Nord Stream pipeline, allegedly. I'm going to keep saying that so I don't get sued by the US government. But, you know, if I was ever to be sued for that, I would ask them to disprove it. Show me that you weren't, you know, show me you don't have intelligence.
Yeah.
They would never go there. But anyways, but where is the anti-war culture? We don't have one anymore. We don't have one. We are conditioned to accept it. That's why from day one, I'm like, stop it. Stop it. I am anti-war. That is, I think we have to really start to own this, because astrologically, you know how we overcome some of the stuff that we just talked about? We make decisions to say that's not okay. And then you're like, well, it's fate and it's in the stars. You know what else is in the stars? Listen, that Mars in Gemini is me risking a career to say, this isn't okay.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
It's also Biden saying, you know what? We're not going to abide by this anymore. We screwed up. You know, we're going to move this to the end. Now, how they do it, whether they do it publicly or behind the scenes, is a thing. But when history finally unfolds, you begin to really see. My big wake-up call in the fact that the U.S. isn't always the good guy is during the Iran hostage situation, 1979. we had a bunch of journalists that were being held in Tehran, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was one of the most, the US led a multinational coalition, but it was really US, rescue effort. Well, it went horribly because in the war room, and it was a literal war room, you have the president, who is not a military person. He's a peanut farmer, but he was a good administrator for things like homebound stuff. His foreign affairs were terrible, and this is an example. And they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Undercover at night. This is the Ramadan calendar. This is this, that, and the other thing. We're going to come in. We're going to sweep in. We're going to do. We have internal intelligence. We have this person telling us this, and that sort of thing. This is our timing. Now we could suffer losses, but this is why we have this many troops, and blah 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 blah. They flew in, and by the way, the president's just like, yeah, this is going to work. Yeah, I think this is going to be good. I'm going to sign off on this. Meanwhile, he had every intelligence person in the room. It was an unmitigated disaster because when they landed the helicopter, the sand got up into the mechanisms. They didn't have a safe place to go, and everybody died. Everybody died. Everybody died. It was an unmitigated disaster because no one was willing to say to that president, it was think tank mentality. Nobody was willing to say to that person, you're wrong. You're not taking this into account. We should do something else. He was trying to be desperate because his poll numbers were terrible. By the way, the part that he didn't recognize was that the Reagan administration that was still running for election, the election didn't happen, had already negotiated a peace deal to have it come to fruition on January, say, 20th, 21st, or I think it was February 1st, after he took office, to say this is going to be his first big win. That was the first time an American president that I knew manipulated other people's lives for their own benefit and good. We're seeing it again in Ukraine.
I don't think we're just seeing it in Ukraine. I think we're seeing it in many parts of the world, because I think this is, I don't really want to go down this road, but I do think this is what's been happening in the UK with the politics in the UK, and it's become self-serving. And I just don't feel that anyone in the government currently has the best interests of the country at heart. And that is why we have so many strikes at the moment. Nurses, doctors, ambulance drivers, firefighters, they're all saying enough's enough.
Crippled. It's crippling your country, right?
Yeah.
In our country, it's they would rather make the division the conversation. That's why it's like identity politics and gender politics and that sort of thing. I'm going to say this with love. I don't give a shit who you love. I don't give a shit about your plumbing. I don't care that for some reason, when you listen to chalkboard music, nails on chalkboard music, it's soothing to you. Whatever you are, whoever you are, I'm going to accept you where you're at. Now, I reserve the right to either resonate with you or not resonate with you. That's my power. But I can't affect your outcome with my opinion, my judgment, or my whatever. That is an evolutionary process that we are not there. It's amazing. When you look at the evolution of man, why did we have cave paintings? We had cave paintings because we felt the need to mark it in history to tell the tale, because there is something connected to it. You came from this. There's survival technique on here. It's important that I teach my children how to hunt a rabbit, let's say, right? So it's an evolutionary thing. We put it on the cave paintings, not only for posterity, but because our brains were getting so full of stuff. Like, oh, before I forget, let me tell you, right? Then that turned into the creation of paper. Then that created into the creation of the printing press, and then to the computer, and then to whatever. So evolutionary statistics, evolutionary patterns are there. The part that we're at right now is the part of, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. It is a utilitarian, everybody should benefit. Look at how effing selfish we are. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm clearly passionate about this. Like, I have dreams about this stuff, guys. Like, they're very clear to me what I have to talk about. Like, I'm not coming. Thank you for giving me the space with this today, Penny.
Absolutely. No, it has to be said. And I fully respect your viewpoint, which is not much different from mine.
Yeah.
So
except you still think I'm an okay looking guy?
Yeah, I think you're pretty cool.
I think you're pretty all right too. You know, listen, through all of this, you know, you find the magic in the moment. And for you and I, if this war didn't happen, you and I never would have met.
Yeah.
So there are rainbows in every storm, right?
Yeah.
There are moments from that. And it's
actually, Brandon, we haven't met. That little detail.
Well, I feel like I know you in the biblical sense, and quit sending me those pictures.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You said you weren't going to mention them again on air.
I can edit this part out. By the way, if you're watching this, be sure to like and subscribe.
Yes, please.
Let's have a super light. I mean, March is going to be a crazy time, and it looks like the stock market, you know, in astrological terms. What do you want to do next week?
Well, next week, of course, is March the 1st.
I don't know what that would be significant in world history, but
well, it's your birthday.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but with you.
Oh, bless you. That's nice. Well, I'm glad I'm spending your birthday with you on another wonderful episode of Whiskey and Bagels, where we are going to look at the energy for the month of March. And my God, be prepared to be blown away.
I think that you have such a beautiful perspective on some of the stuff that you've got out already. It's you know, Penny, you blow me away as an astrologer. You really do. You always have. And I think that as we kind of go into this, so we'll keep next week a little lighter.
And
it'll be
we'll look at March in general. We won't go in too deeply to Saturn and Pluto.
We'll talk about it, but we won't talk.
We'll talk about it, but
we'll talk about it when the time comes. But make sure you guys get up on all of your videos. I've got a couple that are coming out. I'm going to be doing my commentary on the Ukraine video, and I'm going to, you know, talk about what I got right, what I didn't get right, you know, how I've kind of evolved and you know, seen it. And I know, yeah, you're just doing such good work, Penny. You really are.
Oh, gosh, thank you. That means so much. And I tell you what does really mean a lot to me is the support and the lovely feeling I get from my subscribers and all the people that comment. It is just, they have no idea what it means to me. You know, it's not like, oh yeah, there's another one, like heart. It's not that at all. Every single comment, even the ones which are not particularly complimentary, I read and look at. And the ones that are not particularly complimentary, I try and find a response which is caring.
You're just a boorish human, American, using another lovely British woman for your own devices. Thanks for watching. Mwah! All right.
I love you, Brandon.
I love you too, Penny. Listen, we're going to give each other the hard taps. And again, we're giving the hard taps to the Ukraine war situation. All we have been saying from day one is give peace a chance.
Yes.
All right. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Keep going.
Bye.